US imposes sanctions on China's semiconductor industry, yet China poised to dominate space race. Welcome to another episode of China Record. Have you ever wondered why Western media seldom discuss China's space race, yet frequently cover US sanctions on China? Recently, China's advancements have been a hot topic in Western media for months. However, while the US seems focused on imposing sanctions on China, it appears to overlook that China is potentially leading the space race. In this episode, we delve into the question, is the US overlooking China's space development? Stay tuned as we unravel this intriguing subject. China in the progress. China is really stepping up its game in the space race. The history of space exploration in China is quite fascinating. It stretches back to 900 AD when innovators in the country pioneered the first rudimentary rockets. Although China did not participate in the space race of the mid-20th century, the country had begun to pursue space travel by the late 1950s. In response to the US and Soviet Union's progress towards lofting weapons into orbit, China began to pursue space travel in the late 1950s to deliver its own strategic nuclear and conventional weapons into space. At first, China had a joint cooperation agreement with the Soviet Union, which gave them access to Soviet R-2 rocket technology. However, the accord dissolved in the 1960s and China began to chart its own path to space, launching its first rockets in September 1960. Starting in the late 1960s, China began working on sending humans into space. However, the process was not a speedy one. The country was in the midst of major political division, particularly after the death of Chairman Mao Zedong. In 1988, China created the Ministry of Aerospace Industry to oversee all aspects of space flight. After a few years, the ministry was split up to establish the China National Space Administration (CNSA) and the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation. The first Chinese astronaut to travel to space, Yang Liwei, was sent by the CNSA. Yang Liwei was a military pilot and major general in the Air Force. In 2003, he rode to orbit aboard a Shenzhou 5 capsule on top of a Long March family rocket, the Chang'e 2F. The flight was short, just 21 hours long, but it granted China title of the third country to ever send a human into space and safely return them to Earth. Today, China's space program is aimed at eventually sending astronauts to the moon and beyond. They are also planning to build a base on the moon. They're moving at double the speed of the US, and if they keep this up, they might just take the lead by the end of this decade. They've got this cool new telescope, the Xuantian, that's going to give us some amazing views of the universe. Plus, their astronauts on the Shenzhou 16 are doing some pretty wild experiments in space, like playing with open flames and growing veggies. They've also launched a new satellite called Yaogan. Last year, they even put up their own space station and have been doing all sorts of missions to the moon. They're planning to set up a research station on the moon by 2025. How cool is that? Humiliated history. The US has a law in place that prevents NASA, the American Space Agency, from sharing its data with China. This law effectively barred China from using the International Space Station, ISS, which is a multinational collaborative project involving 5 space agencies: NASA, United States, Roscosmos, Russia, JAXA, Japan, ESA, Europe, and CSA, Canada. But China, not being one to back down from a challenge, decided to take matters into their own hands. They embarked on an ambitious project to launch their own space station. And they succeeded. They've launched the Tiangong, which translates to Heavenly Palace. It's an apt name for a space station, don't you think? This is a significant milestone for China. It's not just about having their own space station. It's a demonstration of their growing capabilities in space technology. It shows that they have the resources, the technology, and the expertise to undertake such complex projects. And it's not just about national pride either. Having their own space station opens up new opportunities for scientific research and exploration. It could lead to new discoveries and advancements in various fields like astronomy, meteorology, and even medicine. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal. It shows how far China has come in the field of space technology, and it's exciting to think about what they might achieve in the future. However, it's important to note that advancements in space technology are not just a competition but also an opportunity for international collaboration and shared scientific progress. Each country's contributions to space exploration can lead to new discoveries and technological advancements that benefit all of humanity. It's not about one country versus another, but rather how we can all work together to explore and understand the universe. U.S. busy sanction on China's semiconductor, but China is about to dominate in space race. The U.S. has put some roadblocks in the way of China's semiconductor industry. They've basically said, nope, you can't have our advanced chip-making tech, and our companies can't send you the latest chips. It's all part of their plan to slow down China's growth in this field. But China isn't taking this lying down. They're fighting back with a bunch of initiatives to bridge the gap. They're pouring a whopping $150 billion into their domestic IC industry through things like the National Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund, CCF. Their goal? To have 70% of their chips made in China by 2025. And guess what? Despite these sanctions, China's semiconductor industry is booming. It's growing faster than anywhere else in the world. They're leading the pack when it comes to building new factories for semiconductor fabrication. In 2021, they had 8 out of the 19 new fabs being built worldwide. And between 2021 and 2023, they're expected to start building a total of 17 new fabs. On the other hand, China is indeed making significant strides in the space race. They have launched their own space station, the Tiangong, and are developing their civilian and domestic space sectors. They are also investing heavily in space infrastructure designed to secure both economic and military advantages. In fact, a report by the Defense Innovation Unit, the Air Force Research Laboratory, and the U.S. Space Force argued that without a unified direction, the U.S. would be at risk of losing its strategic technological advantage over China by 2032. Share are some additional facts. China's Tiangong space station is expected to double in size in the coming years. NASA has expressed concern over China's plans for the moon, suggesting that Beijing could seek to dominate lunar resources. Despite these concerns, the U.S. is still better positioned for technological competition than China, according to a recent report. The U.S. needs to maximize its competitive advantage in key strategic technologies to overcome China's advantages, which include greater scale, hyper-integrated platforms, and faster product integration loop. So, the U.S. should consider the following strategies to maintain its lead in the space race against China. Increase funding. The U.S. should continue to increase funding for space exploration and technology. In 2021, the U.S. space budget was roughly $59.8 billion, far ahead of China's estimated budget of $16.18 billion. Strengthen partnerships. The U.S. should leverage its strong network of partners to amplify its lead in key space capabilities. Promote space cooperation. Promoting space cooperation with China could help to dampen the hype around a space race and foster a more collaborative approach. Focus on innovation. The U.S. should focus on innovation in key strategic technologies to maintain its competitive advantage. Thank you for watching my video on China Record. I hope you found it informative and enjoyable. Your support means a lot to me and encourages me to bring more new episodes. If you liked the video, please don't forget to leave a comment and share it with others. Stay tuned for more exciting content.